We are coming headfirst into the January transfer window, and that means that anybody and everybody can be on the move. I have a list of like the top, 20 U.S. men's national team players, and just about everybody's connected to a club. It's going to be a ridiculous winter transfer window for us. It's going to be silly season in its highest regard. I've brought on Asa Smith of the Touchdowns and Touchlines podcast. Did I say that right? Did I get it backwards?
Touchlines and Touchdowns.
Touchlines and Touchdowns podcast. I always put the touchdowns first. Anyway, so it's going to be an absolute silly season for the U.S. men's national team, especially considering, I put together a video of the top 10 U.S. men's national team players right now. I released it earlier this week, and I think 8 of the top 10 have a lot of smoke next to their name whenever it comes to transfer rumors. Not just like, everybody has a transfer rumor. These are like real rumors. And Asa, I know that you are a big fan of any type of movement, any type of hype, of players saying one thing or an agent saying one thing and then the opposite things happen. How are you heading into this January transfer window?
I got to tell you, favorite time of the year. It's like, because the thing is that like, I support Spurs, from a club perspective. I support, obviously, the U.S. men's national team. But the thing about games and actual playing of the sport is that it's pretty cut and dry. Like, either you won or you lost or drew, I guess. And, like, you can sort of deal with that, right? But, like, transfer rumors are eternal. Like, and you can make them up and you can believe multiple at the same time. Like, do you know how fun it is that we are living in a world in which people desperately believe that Bayern Munich want multiple Americans? Like, yeah. And they don't probably there's apparent rumors with Dest. We'll get to him, but like, even if it's not true, even if Ricardo Pepi is not the most sought after striker in the world, which I have my theories about, like, you can believe all of it at the same time. And it's so dumb and it's so funny. And like, you get agents just sort of leaking things, and it's But like, just going back to Dest, and we'll talk about him, but like, did you notice that the rumored transfer list is just everybody who's not Spanish from Barcelona? Like, how weird, how bizarre. I wonder if somebody has an agenda.
What's his name? The former Dutch Manchester United coach came out and said whenever anything goes bad at Barca, they always blame it on the foreigners, and he was referring to Ronald Koeman, but Dest is definitely in that group as well. One of my favorite things about the transfer season is that, one of the things that transfers you from a child to an adult is whenever you get that innocence broken and realize that like adults lie. And in transfer season, like adults lie right and left. Like they'll tell you one thing and mean the exact opposite. I see things get leaked all the time. I know we had a back and forth on Twitter the other day because the owner for FC Dallas came out with this statement about Ricardo Pepi saying that, it's in his best interest to stay at FC Dallas so that he could have his World Cup spot, intact. And like, I'm just reading that, like, of course you would say that. Like, you want your leverage. Like, whenever you're reading this stuff, it's generally the exact opposite is true, or, they're saying whatever they can say to maintain the most leverage possible.
Yeah. And like, it's always like, that's like the sort of like the secondary part. It's like what is said, what is meant. And like, obviously what is meant there is that he doesn't want to give away his player for $12 million. He wants to give away his player for $20 million.
Yeah.
And like, it's negotiating through the press, and that's always fun. But my favorite part of that entire thing was like the Dallas press, I think, or was it the Houston Chronicle? I don't remember which.
It was Dallas. It was a Dallas news
paper.
Organization, whatever it was.
Right. So like the Dallas paper reported that, and Dallas specifically, like as a city and as a press corps, knows better than this. Because like, think about it, like the Cowboys, you have SMU, you have Texas, Texas A&M, all of it. It is the center of that part of college football stupidity. And the headline was still reported uncritically, where it's like, if he leaves, then it's probably bad for his U.S. men's national team stuff. And it's like, imagine if the AD at Texas, at UT, was like, if Sam Ehlinger transfers, it's probably bad for his ability to get to the NFL. The headline would not be, if he transfers, it's bad for the NFL. It's Texas AD doesn't want quarterback to leave.
But because, exactly.
But because soccer is sort of given that, like, sort of like that backseat, it's like they didn't put the same lens on. But I love it.
People eat it up, and I eat it up. I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm not part of it too. Like, I'll retweet a juicy rumor as well, man.
Every
I
time.
love it too. Let's jump right in to the first one, the first name on my list. I'm going off of my top 10 rankings that I did the other day, just because I had the document saved and it was very convenient for me. So we're going to start out with Weston McKennie. You mentioned that you're a Tottenham fan, and Weston's been linked with Tottenham for a while now, but it seems like the smoke is turning into flames, and there's actually like numbers being discussed right now. We know Juventus is in a situation where they need to recoup a lot of money. A report came out the other day that there's some unscrupulous business things going on with Juventus, which of course wouldn't be the first time that happened. So there's potential that they're going to get some type of soccer equivalent to a death penalty type thing. They'll be moving down to the Serie B, which is, of course, not the first time that would have happened. So I don't know everything, the ins and outs, all that. All I know is that Juventus is a squad that needs some cash right now. There's not that many young players with a lot of upside on that team. Weston McKennie is one of them. He's a player that they can get some money back from right away. Now, going back to what we just said about, situations saying one thing and the club saying another, the Weston's coach came out and said how Weston is his ideal midfielder, how he's an integral part of the club, and they don't see him moving, despite. So everybody's saying that Weston's going to move. The coach says he doesn't see the team without Weston. What do you see with Weston here, and do you think he would be a good fit over at Tottenham?
So I say this as a big Weston McKennie fan and a big Spurs fan. No, please don't come to Spurs, please, because I want you to develop for your own benefit. And Spurs, okay. So Spurs have a desperate need at actual midfielder because Tanguy Ndombele apparently is just the worst practice player of all time and refuses to be in shape. And your other midfield options is the ghost and corpse of Dele Alli, Harry Winks, which I don't know how much you know about Harry Winks, but not great. And then it's Pierre Højbjerg, who's playing awful this year, and then Oliver Skip, who actually has been playing pretty well. So there's a need. There is a need for a box-to-box energy midfielder, and West does fit that. But Spurs are going nowhere, and I want West to do well. Speaking about the Juventus stuff, it happened because the allegations, of course. Everything is allegations. It's alleged. Please don't sue me. County of Turin, I guess that's where Juventus is.
It's probably not a county, but
whatever. City, whatever. I don't know the subdivisions of Italy.
No.
In 1848, they all combined. Whatever. The point is that they basically sold people for one amount of money and reported on their books a lower or a higher or lower amount of money, whichever was beneficial. And the guy who was allegedly in charge of that is the sporting director for Spurs. So let me tell you how excited I am for the Spurs adventure in the English Championship in about 3 years.
Well, okay. I didn't realize that part of the equation. But, looking at Weston McKennie, I mean, you say Spurs is not a good spot. You want him to go to a spot that could potentially he'd be more successful at. I mean, looking at world soccer right now, most of the money is in the Premier League. Most of the money that people are spending right now is – where else could Weston potentially go? I mean, especially for the price tag that he's commanding and at the age he is right now. How many better clubs are there out there right now than Spurs legitimately that could go out and get him? Do you think that EPL specifically is not a good destination for him? What would be a better destination for McKennie at this point? Or is it best to just stay at Juventus?
So I think that he is there aren't many better clubs. I'll concede that. But I think that there are clubs with higher ceilings in the near future, and I don't think that West is going to go to his forever home with this move. I think that if you told me that Leicester was going to sell Madison for 50 and use 25 of that on West, I think that wouldn't be a terrible move, assuming Brendan Rodgers continues to care about his job, which who knows. I wouldn't mind it if he found his way to back to Germany. I think that there's a lot of interesting things going on there. I think that he would fit well actually in the Leipzig system. We'll talk about that in a minute, I'm sure, because of Tyler Adams. But I think that if he's going to move away from Italy, I think that he needs to go to a spot where he's going to play and play a lot. And even if they're not a team with European ambitions of winning stuff, at least they're playing there. So the answer that I'm going to give here is actually it's not Leicester, it's Weston. I think that if he moved into that Weston system, I think that he'd be playing a ton. I think that he's a guy that they could build around. I think that they have just enough Champions League money or Europa League money to
the EPL money is pretty good.
EPL money. And I'm going to give you a dark horse here, and it's going to be my answer for all of our players. Newcastle. Why not?
Yeah, Newcastle is kind of the great unknown as they come into this, and they're not real well liked in the world for obvious reasons, and going after a very well liked American player might be a good remedy for that, and will put a lot of us as fans in precarious positions. I will say I have made the case that I do like our players in the Premier League, because whenever they're in the Premier League, all the press and everything, all the team media, everything is in English. So we get to see that, we get to pour over that, and I think that the not so diehard fans get more access to that. Like currently, if you want to read about Wes McKennie, it's going to be translated, or like you read what some Italian guy tells you that the article said or something like that, which is less accessible for a lot of people. And I think Wes is a genuine star, not just on the field but off. But I would like to have as many people have access to him as possible. So I would like to see him in the Premier League, the premier English-speaking league in the world right now. And I don't see that changing in the near future unless MLS does some really wild things. But that's why I like that. Speaking of the Premier League, let's move on to the guy who I have at the number 2, but is probably the biggest star in U.S. soccer now and maybe ever. That is Christian Pulisic, the young man from Hershey, Pennsylvania. He is currently at Chelsea, but basically since the arrival he had at Chelsea, people have been talking about his departure from Chelsea, and there have been rumors swirling that he might be on the outs. In Chelsea, you have a side that won the Champions League, but it's a side that has a lot of rotation, has a lot of players for only a few positions in that front three. They just brought in Lukaku, who seems to be the main forward. That means that there's really only 2 spots up for grabs for Christian Pulisic, although we've seen him play a little bit at the right wing back position, which is neither here nor there for U.S. men's national team fans' concerns. What do you think about Christian Pulisic potentially on the outs at Chelsea? There's a lot of fans who swear to you that Thomas Tuchel hates Christian Pulisic secretly, and there was a rumor that came out of all places that Barcelona is interested in Christian Pulisic. So what do you think about all that?
So I think the thing is, first things first, I think that Christian's not going anywhere, because as much as people think that Tuchel doesn't like him, Tuchel loves him. He just loves him as a sub, because he can play 5 different positions for Chelsea at any given moment, and he has the ability to change games. I mean, you saw it even last week. He comes in for 15 minutes, changes the game offensively as a right wing back or right wing back. And for those advanced positions, you have Havertz, you have Ziyech, you have Hudson-Odoi,
Callum Hudson-Odoi, Timo Werner,
Lukaku, and then you have Christian. I think that the future of I don't think Christian's leaving. I think Werner's leaving. I think that he played really well, during the week. But I think that the fact of the matter is that their best offense, and I'm gonna plug my like sister podcast here. Check out Chelsea Hour on Twitter. But their best offense, their best lineup includes Kai Havertz in that central position. And so they really have 3 center forwards, not 2, between Werner, Lukaku, and Kai. So if you see Kai as a center forward, then they really only have 3, elite-ish, whatever, in that sort of inverted winger spot. And one of them is Christian. The question is that, do you think that Christian is a locked-in starter of Ziyech and CHO? And that is the question. Like, do you think that they can have $82 million on the bench? And the answer is, yeah, they can. Yeah. If Barcelona are going to bring in Christian, great. I mean, he would be a superstar, but he would get blamed for everything, because they're not going to blame Dembele because they love him. They're not going to blame Depay because they just brought him in and he scores goals. So it's like somebody in that front three is going to get crap, and it's not going to be it's not going to be those two. And they're not going to blame Pedri. They're not going to blame the other folks that they love over there. So it's going to be Christian in the same way that right now it's Dest, right? Like if you put Sergino Dest in a situation to fail and then he fails, it's not his fault. And it'll be the same thing for Christian. So I would not like him to go to Barcelona, especially Barcelona as currently owned by the Lehman brothers as part of the bankruptcy situation, which if you look into who owns the majority of Barcelona right now, it's Lehman, or it's not Lehman brothers, it's JP Morgan. Like JP Morgan owns the majority of Barcelona right now due to debt and bankruptcy. So like, I don't want Christian Pulisic going to a place that's going to collapse onto itself.
Yeah, it's a situation where Barcelona's they're a mid-table club in Spain right now. There's a lot of internal issues. They've been through a couple coaches at this point that it hasn't gone well. They have not been able to turn over from that golden generation of players that they've had. They brought in a lot of guys that have kind of sizzled out, that they brought them in for big money and sold them on for a lot less. Do they have the funds to bring in a $70 million player in Christian Pulisic? I don't know. It doesn't seem like the best spot for him at the moment.
They do, because money's not real.
True. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In that regard, they do. But I do agree with a lot of what you said in regards to Chelsea and their front line. It does seem like Timo Werner's the odd man out. It does, because he can go to Germany. He can go to a lot of, pick any club in the top 8 of Germany right now, and they'll gladly give, what do you think he'd get, like $30 million, whatever it is he's worth right now for Timo Werner. And I think Werner would be a lot happier in Germany right now, because it just hasn't gone well for him at all in England, and he can go right back to scoring goals left and right in the Bundesliga. I do think that that's the best spot. I do think that Thomas Tuchel is going to rotate a ton for Chelsea. I think that a lot of those players can play multiple positions. You mentioned Havertz can play either in that wing spot or at the center forward. Mount can play further back in the midfield. Christian can play in that right wing back. Ziyech is kind of an odd man out, and he's come on really well recently, but I don't know if he's a player that's going to shine as well whenever the games get to the top level. That's where I've seen him kind of shrink a little bit, because he's physically is not a very strong guy. And whenever there's physical players that are just as quality as he is on the ball, he kind of fell apart in the Champions League, and you saw Chelsea really rely on Havertz and Pulisic and Mount in those situations. But yeah, anyway, I don't think this is the time for Christian to move. There's a lot of discussion because Christian is an American, and a lot of those Brits in those comment sections aren't very favorable to Americans. Christian has been injured, which is true. He's been injured for a lot of the time while he's been at Chelsea. Some due to his issues, some due to things he couldn't have helped. But that's just a reality for Christian at this point. He's been injured. We hope that he stays healthy, but he has been injured for a lot of his time there. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think we've wrapped it up on Christian. I think we're ready to move on to the number 3 guy, because this is a fun one. Tyler Adams is my number 3 player, and there is a lot of smoke connecting him right now to Manchester United. Manchester United just brought in Tyler's former manager. I forget the guy's name.
Ralph Rangnick or Chris Armas?
Yeah. And Armas came in as an assistant coach, who, of course, coached Tyler Adams while he was over at New York Red Bulls. So there's a lot of familiarity there already for him. You're looking at Tyler Adams, a player who I think is 22, 23 right now, something like that. And if you think about, these kids are humans just like you and I. I mean, maybe he spent his high school years in New York, and then he's essentially spent his college years over in Leipzig. And I think at this point he's kind of become an adult and is ready to go off on his own. At least if I were Tyler Adams, I would be in that position right now. It's not like he's a kid that grew up in Leipzig or Germany or anything like that. He doesn't have strong ties to him. I think if I'm Tyler Adams, this is kind of the time where I would like to go off on my own. But what do you think about this rumor that's linking Tyler Adams to Manchester United? Do you think that would be a good fit for Tyler?
So first things first, like many college graduates, his first option is definitely Manchester, England. Everybody wants to go there.
Absolutely. Party spot.
Yeah, it's great. No, but I think that it's a good landing spot if he gets a certain understanding. So they love They love, and by love I mean desperately hate, their six combination of McTominay and Fred.
Yeah.
They hate him. So if he comes in as a guy that's like, hey, like you're going to be one of our dual six for the future, and you're going to play, behind Fernandez, and on the wings you're going to have Sancho and Rashford, and up top you're going to have Ronaldo and Martial, although he requested a transfer today. That's awesome. That would be great. And having defenders like Varane, I don't know. Varane. Behind you, not Harry Maguire because he's trash, but yeah, at me, Harry Maguire, whatever. But I think it's a great landing spot with a caveat, which is if they bring him in and they pair him with McTominay or Fred, they need to give him the opportunity to actually settle in as a six. I think that the biggest issue that Tyler Adams has had is that he has never had, outside of Jesse Marsch, a coach who sees him full time as a defensive midfielder. Even Greg Berhalter put him at right back. And like we can make the joke about how everybody in the American player pool is a right back, but the fact of the matter is that he needs an assurance that he's not Aaron Wan-Bissaka's backup as the right back. He is a true six, because whatever move he makes, wherever he goes next, he needs to be a locked in six. And, you're not going to go and try to get like a promise to be a starter or whatever. I mean, I would, but, you need to be able to play in the position that you're best in. And that's just sort of the situation. There are certain people on Twitter who I won't name who think that he's trash and is only going to be effective as a right back. I don't think so. I think he's a six, and I think he needs to go somewhere and play the six. So if that's Manchester United, great. If Armas and Ragnick and Marsch, there was a rumor that Marsch was going to join that staff as well, are going there and they see him as a six and that's where he's going to play, awesome. But if they're bringing him in just to stockpile talent, I wouldn't be all that interested. There are other options for Tyler beyond the biggest club in the world.
The thing about Manchester United is they are, even though they haven't been performing it lately, they are one of, if not the biggest club in the world, and they will routinely bring in these massive talents. I mean, in the last few years, they brought in Cavani, they brought in Ronaldo, they brought in Paul Pogba. Like, they have no issues with going out and getting the next big guy. And we know, playing in England, there's always that danger out there that, maybe they go out and get Jude Bellingham, or they go out and get Declan Rice, or go out and get whoever the next big English kid is, and that kid's going to give the preferential treatment over at United. But I do think Tyler Adams, I just believe in his quality so much. Now, they did say in the article that Ragnick likes his ability to play in the midfield, but also cover at the right back position. Like, I don't think he's ever going to get away from that. But I do think you mentioned McTominay, you mentioned Fred. I think some Van der Beek played in that position.
They hate him.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't? One of the issues that we've seen with Man United whenever Ronaldo came in was, Ronaldo doesn't like to run. Well, if you don't like to run, bring in Tyler Adams, because he'll run for everybody out there. He is nonstop. I think that his style of play will endear him greatly to the English fans who love a player who runs, who love a player with energy, that gets stuck in, and Tyler Adams is going to do all those things. If this is a position where you bring Tyler Adams in, you let him do his Tyler Adams thing, and you surround him with these amazing ball players, I think that's the makings of a really good squad. And not to mention, it would be absolutely amazing to have like a field player that's starting for Manchester United in the States, because we know how big the footprint of Manchester United is over here in the United States. You can say that we have players at Chelsea or Juventus, but that doesn't quite ring as loudly still as Manchester United. So for those reasons, I would be interested in seeing it. Although we've seen, if it starts going bad at Man U, it can go really bad really fast.
It gets bad. But yeah, I mean, just like in terms of Manchester United, Barcelona is probably one of, if not biggest clubs in the world. But Eurotrip mentioned Manchester United for a reason. And did I want to shoehorn in the movie Eurotrip here because it's great? Yeah, I did. But it's not an accident that they chose for their club to use as a set piece Manchester United, because in America, because of the Wayne Rooney, David Beckham era, Michael Owen, I guess, that was the team, they are the Lakers or the the Cowboys. You know, like they are the team. So if Tyler Adams could break in and be a starter at Manchester United, like I don't care what version of Manchester United you're talking about, that's a big deal.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like, languages matter. Like, Barcelona is the biggest club in the Spanish-speaking world, and whenever the U.S. went down to Central America, they went gaga over Sergino Dest because he was this player from Barcelona. But you know, Americans, although a lot of Americans speak Spanish, not all Americans speak Spanish, but just about all Americans speak English out there. So it's a lot easier to get the lore and the fanfare for Manchester United. A lot of us know that a little bit of their history. A lot of Americans will be able to connect, like David Beckham and Cristiano Ronaldo at Manchester United. It's just a thing that's ingrained in our culture. Let's move on to the number 4 player. It's a player that actually doesn't have many transfer rumors connected to him. Sort of. That is Tim Weah. Tim Weah is playing at Lille right now. He's having a season where he's really becoming a more and more important player for that squad, which is why there's a rumor that Ikone, one of the players that Weah is fighting for time for in that little squad, is rumored to be leaving Weah as going to be taking on a bigger mantle for that little squad. I don't know how much there is to say about Weah as far as transfers, but I think he's really turned a corner. He's really played a lot better. His end product for both club and country have come a long way in this year, and he's really elevated to the position of superstar.
I agree, and I think that I was going to say like the biggest transfer rumor for Tim Weah is Ikone, I think that says everything you need to know about Weah. Weah is going to get sold not this window and probably not the next 2. I think summer 2023. He is going to go for, assuming injury, health, and progression as we see it. I think he's going to go for big dollars. I think that there's a certain team in Paris that are going to get to watch him, for the next 18 months, and they're going to be like, "This kid is fast. It's George Weah's son. Are you kidding? Like, hell yeah, let's go." And I think that would be that's what you're looking at for his progression. I'm incredibly high on Weah, and I think Lille is too.
Yeah, and one of the most exciting transfer windows is always the transfer window following the World Cup, and we got the World Cup in a year. It's going to be a Winter World Cup, so there'll be a transfer window following that World Cup. So that's another opportunity for Weah. But yeah, I think he's in a good spot right now. He's forming a very good partnership with David over there at Lille. Nice CONCACAF combination. They got something good going. Not quite as good as they were maybe a season ago, 2 seasons ago, but still. I'm very happy with the position Tim Weah is in right now. Let's move on to a player who's in a position that I don't think anybody's happy with right now, Sergino Dest. The baguette man, the mercurial right back in name only at this point, because Barcelona's been playing him as a right wing back or just a flat out right winger in a situation where Barcelona's really struggling for wingers right now. Sergino Dest is great with the ball at his feet. Maybe doesn't have the end product, but anyway, he came into Barcelona in this much ballyhooed transfer from Ajax as I think he was 20 years old at the time. Maybe he was 19. But the issue with Dest has always been wonderful with the ball at his feet, kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. Kind of questionable defensively. And I see a lot of people out there saying, Barcelona should be investing into him, should be coaching him up, should be getting him to be a better defensive right back. And I've always said, why? That's not really, Barcelona will coach you up whenever you're in their academy, but once you get to the first team, you're expected to play like one of the best players in the world. That's not a place where you go to get coached up. You get coached up in Ajax. You get coached up in Borussia Dortmund. You don't get coached up at Chelsea or Manchester City or they're expecting you to be a finished product at that point. But there is a lot of rumors connecting Sergino Dest to Bayern Munich right now. That's the club he was rumored to be transferred to whenever he was with Ajax. Of course, Bayern Munich have Benjamin Pavard standing in his way at the moment. But what do you think about the entire Sergino Dest situation?
So I think that Dest, there's. So I have a theory of players, and this is across sports, right? It's if you have an A+ quality and a B quality, you shouldn't necessarily be held back because of your B quality, unless that B quality is the key to your game, right? So Sergino Dest is a phenomenal, and I don't use that word lightly, phenomenal attacking right back.
Nobody's questioned that. Nobody has
Right.
ever questioned
Like,
his attacking ability.
I think he's right there with anybody. Like, I think that he can attack from the right back position with anybody. From that depth, he gets a little bit of room. He gets ahead of steam. He's golden. When they put him as a right winger, it's like, yeah, he's good going forward, but he's good going forward as a right back. As a right winger, he is average, below average for that spot. Because, you need your right winger to be Christian Pulisic or Tim Weah, not a guy who's used to getting ahead of steam, seeing the field, whatever. So
Yeah.
I think the thing is with him, anybody who's saying like, oh, Barcelona should invest in his defense. Why? It's not that they should invest in his defense. It's that they should invest in somebody who can cover for him defensively, because I think he is world class as an attacking right back. He is bang average as a defender. But he is, and when he tries, he's good. Like, when he gives a crap, he is a good defender. I don't think that that's the issue. I think the issue is that he is really, really good going forward. So in terms of the transfer rumor to Bayern, I like it because I think that he would, due to the secret sauce in their training, he would suddenly get really, really, really strong, which would be good for his purposes because he's pretty slight. I'm not saying anything about Bayern. They have really, really good weight rooms.
The secret sauce you're referring to is that players transfer there and seem to put on like 20 to 15, 20 to 25 pounds of muscle just fairly quickly. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, they have really, really good weight room.
Yeah,
coaches.
apparently
That's
they
what
do.
It is. Yeah, just like Barry Bonds, just workout maniac. Michigan State in the 80s. Great
Alphonso Davies went from a twig to just an Iron Man without losing an ounce of speed.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So
Crazy how that happened.
I get the secret sauce that you're talking about, and yeah, I think Sergio Dest might be able to put a little weight on his frame, and he might be able to get that over in Bayern Munich. Yeah, I think the Sergio Dest also falls in that category that Weston McKennie falls in at Juventus, where looking around that club, they've got a lot of bloat. They've got a lot of players that they've overpaid a lot for. Sergio Dest is one of the few young players that they might be actually be able to turn a profit around on and get some money back into the club and reinvest that into some veterans who, while might not be as elite going forward as Sergio Dest, can cover that back line a little bit better, which is, I think, what Xavi's looking for. He already brought in Dani Alves, but Barcelona's got a long way to go, and I do think that Dest is getting a lot of heat right now. But Dest is just a weird dude, man. He's a
I mean, look, I'll say this about Sergio Dest: he is one of the funniest people on this team. Like on the U.S. men's national, he's so funny to me.
Easily.
His ability to like whenever there are those there are like stories about the players, right? It's like, oh, Christian signed the kid's jersey. Oh, Wes is wearing a cowboy hat. And it's like, oh, Sergio Dest is riding around Barcelona in like a leased Lamborghini and interacting with fans in ways that don't make sense. I love him.
He put up like TikTok dances with like dancers behind him. He went on this tour of Miami this summer. Everything he does is like, go ahead, Sergio.
Continue.
I mean, the baguette story is one of my favorites of all time. Yeah, he's a weird dude, and if he gets put in a position in Bayern Munich where Bayern's going to dominate 90% of the possession for 90% of the games, Sergio Dest is going to absolutely be able to go wild. Let's move on to number 6, another player that doesn't really have any smoke by his name. That is Gio Reyna. I think the thing about Gio Reyna is just get healthy. I think Gio Reyna is eventually going to get moved on from Borussia Dortmund, but it ain't going to happen in this window. The next player is going to be Yunus Musa. Yunus Musa doesn't really have any transfer rumors attached to his name right now. A player that coming into the season, Valencia had a lot of high hopes for, but he entered the season with that injury, and he hasn't really gotten going. There's all this talk that we're all well aware of that he plays right wing there, but everybody sees him as a center mid going forward, but there's players ahead of him at that position. Not a lot to report there as far as Yunus Musa goes. The next guy is Miles Robinson, which is an interesting one because we get to the first player who is 24 years old. At this point, he is a MLS lifer over in for Atlanta United. He's a player that he's one of these guys that for a lot of big moments in his career where he could have been a part of some, he could have put himself in the shop window. He ended up injured or for whatever reason. I mean, Something to point out right now, just as an aside, like you don't have to talk about this, but Miles Robinson was supposed to be on the Olympic qualifying team, but Atlanta United didn't let him go. Imagine Miles Robinson, who a few months later dominated the Gold Cup, could have been a defender. I feel like he could have helped that squad.
You think? Do you think that the Atlanta United boys could have been helpful for a squad that didn't qualify for the Olympics? So
anyway, so he's being connected with a potential move to the Bundesliga right now. Do you think that a move for him right now is a good thing? Of course, MLS is going into the winter break right now, so he's not going to get much playing time for the next few months. So we can talk about Miles Robinson and then kind of transition to a whole host of MLS players who are also getting minutes for the national team. What do you think about Miles Robinson?
So I think Miles is a strange situation, and I say this as someone who thinks that like you should play at the highest levels and test yourself and do the best you can. What Miles is good at, and what I think Miles is in fact elite at, is dude is fast, and he tracks the ball really, really well. And in a league that is as attack focused as MLS is, and in a league that is really puts pressure on defenders to do things properly. It's actually sort of fine if he doesn't move. Now, if you told me that Gladbach were about to bring him in, yeah, great, cool, do it. Or if Dortmund was or Freiburg, I guess one of these sort of like upper to mid table Bundesliga teams, great, I'd be all in on it. But Miles isn't wowing people because he's good with his feet and he needs to progress to the next level. He's fine. He recycles it. He gets the ball where it needs to go. Outside of one pretty catastrophic mistake against Costa Rica that didn't have anything because Brian Ruiz is 87 years old. He doesn't make mistakes with the ball at his feet, even against pressure like against Mexico. So I don't need him to move. He's not going to get faster by going over to Germany again, unless he goes to Munich. But, I don't need him to. If he wants to rest until the World Cup qualifiers at the end of January, cool. I don't need him playing, an intense amount between now and then. But I'll say this. As a 24-year-old defender who relies on speed, the number is not going to be worth it for Atlanta. Because everybody who's going to put up a transfer request for him says to themselves, all right, this guy is worth 3 years. At 27, he's not going to have his legs anymore. So what are we doing? And I think the answer is like, okay, like 12 million for a backup center back for the next 3 years. Sure. That probably works out, but Atlanta's not going to take 12 million for him. So,
there's another side to this that, we usually don't think about, which is, he's 24 years old living in Atlanta, which is one of the more exciting cities in the United States. And he could be making maybe twice as much as he's making now, maybe 2.5 times what he's making right now over in Germany, but he's going to be going to a much smaller, more industrial German city. I don't think that he speaks German. At 24 years old, he's kind of established. It's not like he's a 17-year-old that doesn't really know anything about the world. So, ask yourself, I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are 24 years old. Like, would you kind of give up everything that you know in this world and move halfway around the world to a much smaller city for a little bit more money, but maybe a loss of some quality of life? I don't know. It's a discussion to be had.
Yeah, I'm going to say this as a 30-year-old with children. The answer to that question should be yes. But if you were asking me at 24, the answer would have been no, because I would have been like, well, I like Atlanta, or at that point in my life, New York. But as a 30-year-old with children or 31-year-old with children, Miles absolutely should enjoy all of the fruits of, I don't know, Berlin. I guess Hertha Berlin could probably.
Yeah, I don't know exactly which club he's being connected to, but it's interesting. Though I do think that Miles Robinson has the quality to make it over there. I think that he would benefit a club over there, no problem. And I do worry a little bit about the rust of the guy who is nominally our number one center back at the moment, not playing for a few months, and how that's going to translate into these World Cup qualifiers that are going to be very important over the next couple months. Let's move on on to our next player, which is Brennan Aronson. Brennan Aronson has a rumor connecting him with AC Milan at the moment.
Okay.
So Brennan Aronson has been really tearing it up for Salzburg since he got there. Now, the thing about Salzburg is, a lot of people say that the Austrian league that he's in isn't really better than MLS, but it has one really good club that is much better than any club you could play for in MLS. It's a club that has sent on a lot of players to a lot of big name clubs. It's absolutely a selling club. He's been there for like a year and a half at this point. He slotted into the starting lineup as soon as he got there and has been bagging goals and assists. It's about time for him to move on from that club. Do you think AC Milan is a destination you would like to see Brennan Aronson in for the rest of the season?
So first things first, I don't think they're going to sell him because I think that they don't want to get humiliated in the round of 16, and they already sold Adeyemi to, I want to say, Dortmund. So there's a risk there. I think that he'll move on in the summer. I don't think that they're going to sell him in January. If they do, playing at Milan would be a pretty good landing spot. I mean, I don't really want him to go to Italy because I want him to play in more of a free flowing. But his biggest, like, if you're talking about like shore up your weaknesses, not improve your strengths. He's improved a lot of his strengths playing in a wide open Austrian league. If he goes to Italy, he's going to get tougher. Like you saw it with Busio, right? Like Busio went from like this, like sort of like not really all that tough, really all that strong midfielder to like he went to Italy for 6 months and suddenly he came back and it's like, no, grown man. And Aronson, we've seen him get little brothered a couple of times. It's why he can't really play as an 8 in our system. I think if he goes to Milan, he can play as an 8 because he'll get real tough real quick because they don't play around there.
In his what was it, a Europa League game that he played, or Champions League game that he played in midweek, he actually started like as a number 10, as the tip of a diamond in a 4-4-2 midfield. You bring up an interesting point about tactics in Italy is a lot different than what we see him do in the Salzburg and in the Red Bull system. It's a lot different than what we would see him play in like Germany or the EPL, for instance. The Italian game, it seems a lot more tactical. It seems a lot slower. It seems a lot more defensive. And these are things that are not like he's a full-on presser, run 90 minutes type of guy, and that's not really what you see come out of Italy. And it would force him to slow down a little bit, see the game a little bit more tactically, and fit within a system a little bit more, and maybe that would fit his strengths. Although, yeah, I don't know. I think it might be in his best interest to kind of sit tight, play the rest of the Champions League over at Salzburg, and then kind of at the end of this year have his full horizons in front of him. But Brennan's a player that I did not have high expectations for whenever he went to Salzburg, and he's proved me wrong over and over again. Is a player that has really elevated his game since he left Philly. When you see players do that, at what point do you not just say, like, if he can make it there, he can make it anywhere, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that Aronson is at a point in his development where any team would be happy to have him for the right price. He's a 21-year-old attacking midfielder who has shown a real willingness to play defense. The idea of him going to Italy sort of reminds me of because I have to stay on brand for myself. Like if you put like a 5-star athlete in the Big Ten, and it's like, okay, like you could really unlock a wide receiver at Ohio State against like those Big Ten defenses, because if they can do it against those defenses, they can do it anywhere. But it's not going to be like the best situation for what they want to do. So I think that Aronson can ultimately pick his squad. I think that if AC Milan are saying to him, look, you're going to come, you're going to play, you're going to be part of our rotations, part of our situation, I think he should, I wouldn't hate it. I'll say that. I
wouldn't hate it either. I mean, that's a wonderful giant of a club, but
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what. Let's move on. We got a few players. We got some exciting players left that we haven't touched yet. So John Brooks, not really news there. Made the big money transfer over to Wolfsburg a few years back. Is sitting on a big contract. Is an aging center back. I don't think he's getting to move anytime soon. Anthony Robinson is a player that there's not a lot of smoke there either. Of course, we just mentioned AC Milan. There was a deal that fell through. I think he's largely found his place. I think this is about what you're going to expect from Anthony Robinson. He's hit that prime prime of his career, so we're not expecting him to get much worse or much better at any point. I think he's about where he's at. But the next guy up is Ricardo Pepi. And Ricardo Pepi is one of the hottest names in world soccer right now. A few of the clubs that I've seen him linked to lately, Manchester United, Liverpool. Atletico Madrid seems to be a club that is very hot after him. There's actually a number attached to that one. I think it's 13 or $13.5 million. And Wolfsburg was one of the ones that was attached to him early on. What do you think about Ricardo Pepi potentially transferring this window? Where do you think he should eventually end up?
So, with apologies to the Hunt family, I don't think moving abroad is going to hurt his prospects with the national team. I think ultimately the game for Ricardo Pepi is, can he go to a place where he's going to play? Because the thing is that it's not when you have a striker, if you're talking about a center forward, and you see it with Josh Sargent, actually, and I assume we're not going to talk about him because he's no longer part of the discussion, unfortunately, until he gets his game back together. If you go to a place and they're not going to play you, and they're not going to play you as a center forward, you lose it quickly. Like, there's a cadence, there's a rhythm to it, and it's like what it reminds me of is it's like a pitcher in baseball. It's like, if you're not on that every 5-6 day schedule, you lose it because there's a cadence, and on this day you rest, and on this day you train, and blah, 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 blah. Not every position is like that, but center forward absolutely is. So the question is that if Wolfsburg is looking at, okay, we have a Champions League roster without a Champions League result, we need to sell some of these players along, and they want to bring in Pepi to be, to make a real run at it in 2 to 3 years. I love it. I love the idea of him playing week in, week out in the Bundesliga and not really touching those midweek games, Europa League or Champions League. I'm concerned about him going to a Liverpool, a Manchester United, and then they in turn loan him out. I don't want that. I want him somewhere where they believe in him. He's not going to unseat Ronaldo and Cavani. He's not going to unseat anybody at Liverpool. He's not playing ahead of Hoppe or
Origi just had a big game. Firmino,
yeah. Like these guys are unfortunately at this point in his career, they're better than him. I don't know that'll always be the case. I'm very high on his potential, but you got to go somewhere where you're going to play. And it's, you can talk about Matthew Hoppe, right? Like you want to go somewhere that's big, but you got to play. So if he goes to a Wolfsburg or to a Madrid, I guess, and they're going to play him, cool, great, do it. But if he's going there just to get loaned out, it's a waste of time. I mean, you can see what happened to Matt Miazga. He went there, and Matt Miazga is going to end up making a lot of money playing soccer. But has he played a minute for Chelsea? I don't think so.
He played. He had a few minutes. He's actually one of those players that got pulled before halftime, which is, the biggest insult that you can have to a soccer player. And that was pretty much his last. I think he had 2 games at Chelsea. It might have just been 1, but after that, he never got another opportunity. But yeah, that's the worst case scenario. That's why I don't want to see him go to Manchester United, because I think Manchester United just buy a new striker every week. I mean, if you look at the strikers they have in that squad, it is a who's who. I mean, it's unbelievable. Liverpool. We talked earlier about Sergino Dest at Barcelona. Barcelona's not a squad that's going to coach you up. Barcelona's a squad that expects you to be the end product whenever you get there. That's how it's going to be at Liverpool or Manchester United. I don't think that Ricardo Pepi's the end product right now. I think that he needs to grow. That's why I would prefer to see him out of Wolfsburg. I think Atletico Madrid is a really interesting place, because they do have Suarez, they do have Griezmann. These are some older strikers. Griezmann's kind of a half striker, whatever you want to call him. Suarez is up there in age, but they do play 2 strikers. And a club that plays 2 strikers means that there's going to be more opportunity for minutes. And they do play like this counter-attacking style where they like to get balls into the box, and that really plays to the strengths of Ricardo Pepi. I think that would be really interesting. Not to mention, Ricardo Pepi has that Mexican heritage, speaks Spanish really well, so he wouldn't have any problems speaking the language like we hear is the issue for Matthew Hoppe. It would be really interesting to see him over there. Wolfsburg would be another great spot for him as well. I don't want to see him go to one of these super clubs, but I wouldn't have a problem with that next tier. I think we're in agreement on that.
Yeah, and playing under Diego Simeone.
Simeone.
Simeone. Wow, I wasn't close. Simeone would be a great opportunity, because I think that if Pepi were to become like a defensive, have that defensive instinct, which right now he doesn't, and that's fine. He's 18. He's not supposed to. But if he had that defensive component, it would really unlock a lot of what Berhalter and whoever comes after Berhalter, because Pepi's going to be here for a long time, will want to do off the ball. And I think that if Pepi can become a complete striker, a complete nine, it would fix a lot of our conceptual problems.
Yeah, but like the coach of not the coach, like the owner of FC Dallas has so astutely pointed out, we're not really worried about the long term right here as U.S. men's national team fans. We're worried about what is he going to look like in 1 year from now. That's the most important thing for us. What is he going to look like for the 2022 World Cup? So what place is going to put him in the best position? That's yet to be seen. I'm thinking it's going to be a tier 2 squad, like an Atletico Madrid. It's funny calling Atletico Madrid a tier 2 squad, like they're an incredible squad. But Wolfsburg, something like that. Let's move on. My next player is a player that you just mentioned. That is Matthew Hoppe, an absolute fan favorite, a player that I get a lot of mentions about because I said he's overrated right now, but a player that for one reason or another is just not getting minutes. It does not seem like this move to Mallorca has been good for him so far. Mallorca has talked about loaning him out. I know not too long ago, whenever he was still at Schalke, there was talks about him going to the Bayern Munichs and the Liverpools and the EPLs of the world. At this point, he got that $3.5 million move to Mallorca. I don't think that they're wanting to sell him outright, but I definitely think that they want to get him a loan. It seems like if Mallorca, who's a squad at the bottom of the Spanish Primera Division, are going to loan him out, it's probably not going to be a loan up. It's probably going to be a loan down. So it might be a tier 2 squad. What do you think is the eventual outcome for Matthew Hoppe in this transfer window?
So I'm going to get a little bit of inside baseball here, and I apologize for the watchers who are not so interested in this aspect of it. But the job of an agent and the job of a management team is to convince a young guy, 18, 19, 20, of bad ideas, right? Like any kid will be like, I want to go to the best team I can. And it's the agent's job to be like, maybe the move to a team that you don't understand the language for is in 2 moves, right? Like, let's go to Stoke right now. And let's get a whole bunch of goals at Stoke. And then suddenly, you're not looking at Mallorca, who's at the bottom of La Liga. You're looking at Leicester. You're looking at Leeds. You're looking at Villa, which can pay you more and also will give you more visibility in a better league. And so I think that the question of whether or not he moves along and where and when is a question of, does he trust his agent still? Because that agent is the guy or girl, I don't know who his agent is, but the person who is going to be the go-between. And if he can't trust that agent to do their job, I don't know that he's going to move along because they'll set something up for him and he'll have to be questioning it. So I would love it if he moves to the championship. I think that English is an issue for him. If he wants to move back to the Bundesliga, great. Gruther Firth are going down soon, so maybe they'll want to bring him in as a second Bundesliga loan situation. But I think that he needs to go somewhere where he's comfortable. If the only reason he was not making the bench and not making the game day roster is because of injury, then it's a wait and see. But if it is due to the rumors of him not understanding the language and not being at that level yet, then he simply needs to go somewhere where he's comfortable. There's nothing wrong with playing in an English-speaking country if you only speak English. It's a reality of life. And if
that's how most players play. Most players play in the country of origin.
And that's how most humans work. Like nobody really wants to go somewhere where they have no idea what's going on because they don't speak the language, right? Like if you go to a country and you don't speak the language, you're going to have a bad time if you need to work there. And that's what this is. It's a job. So that's like a very technical answer, but the answer is like go where you can play and where you can have friends who speak the same language as you.
For me, I just don't see him going to like a Bundesliga team or even a lower tier or a championship team. It seems like it's going to be a second division Spanish team. Like it seems like Mallorca is not like a club that has like their tentacles all over the world. Like this is a club that just got promoted. So I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of Mallorca's recent transfers and their ability to pick up the phone and call up Stoke or Greuther Fürth or whoever else it is. We'll see, but it definitely seems like a situation where he needs a move because he has fallen quite far in the depth chart at this point after after not playing. There's rumors that there's an injury. There's rumors about the language. There's rumors about issues with the coach, about attitude issues. I mean, just the checklist of all the things that could go wrong with a player whenever they move to a new club. It all checks out. So let's move on for Matthew Hoppe. Another guy who's struggling right now, Brian Reynolds. I mean, it was, the Brian Reynolds saga went on for a couple of months where, was it going to be Juventus? Was it going to be Fiorentina? He ends up at Roma, kind of has a few games at Roma where he just does not look up to the level. And then Jose Mourinho comes in, and that was like everybody thought, well, he's not going to play Brian Reynolds. And, hey, everybody was right. He hasn't played Brian Reynolds. And in the games where he has actually played him, he hasn't showed that he deserves time. There are rumors that Roma is looking to get a loan for Brian Reynolds. What do you see happening there?
So I think that his inclusion in this friendly roster is very clearly an indication to the world that he's open. It'll be very interesting to see if he starts and plays a ton, which I think he will. And I think the issue with him is that Mourinho was never going to play him because he doesn't play defense, and Mourinho doesn't like people who don't play defense. As a second point, I don't know that I really blame him for the minutes that he's played because he's always been put in situations. Right. He's been put in situations to fail so that Jose Mourinho can prove a point, which he's done at every stop, and he picks players to pick on. And Reynolds is an easy one. I think that the move for him, I don't know that Roma are going to sell him outright. I hope they do. If they don't, I think the move for him is simply saying, look, you go to Roma management, including Jose, and you say, look, you don't want me here and I want to play. So why don't you find me a spot where I can show out, do what I can do, which is to play as a right wing back in a 5 or a 3. Let me get forward. Let me get assists. Let me play free. And when I come back, I'll be worth the investment that you made, right? Like it'll be worth it for everybody, and I can move along, and so can you. The question is that if there are people in that management structure and in that hierarchy beyond Jose who actually do believe in his talent. If they do, he's screwed. If they don't believe in him, he's in a good situation. But if they think that he can be part of Roma moving forward, he's not going to get a good move because they're going to say, well, we need you to improve your defense because that's what we need out of you. And I don't know that he's ever going to be a plus defender. I think that he's someone who will be a plus player, but it's someone who, has to play as part of a 3 or 5 with a right center back who wants to cover. And I don't know that Roma are going to create a system around him. So he needs to find a place that wants to do that. And I don't know where that is.
He is known as a phenomenal athlete, but the tactical side of his game was a part that was supposed to get better, and we haven't seen that improve too much over at Roma. I will say this, we've seen a long run of players going from like 16, 17, 18-year-olds to immediately impacting high-level clubs, but that's not really the norm. Like, the norm is for players to break in at 22, 23 years old, wait a little bit closer to their prime. So for guys like Brian Reynolds and Matthew Hoppe and even like Josh Sargent, to name another, it's not the worst thing in the world that at 20 years old they haven't it hasn't clicked for him yet. We can still we still don't know what that player is going to look like whenever they're 24 years old. There's still a long way to go for that. The only issue though is that we don't have time in a World Cup year to wait for that. They're going to be players for the next cycle. It's looking like very much so right now. So yeah, Brian Reynolds needs to. I mean, it's already basically been a calendar year that he's been at Roma and just not getting much game time. He's a player that at his age needs to be getting on the field and getting minutes somewhere. Doesn't necessarily need to be at the highest level in the world, just needs to be playing somewhere. So we'll see what happens there. It seems like there's incentive for the club, which, remember, the club did spend a bunch of money and they're looking to recoup that investment. They're not looking to just throw away $9 million or whatever it ended up being for Brian Reynolds. So they have some investment looking to get more out of the player. The player wants to get more out of himself. So hopefully they'll reach an agreement that's going to allow him to get more playing time and be a little bit better player. Outside of that, I mean, that wraps up most of it. Like, I've got players, there's an entire MLS contingent of players like Aaron Long, Paul Arriola, Jordan Morris. Sebastian Lletget actually just had transfer rumors about moving to New England. Walker Zimmerman is another player that are in the squad, but you wonder if some of these younger players are going to come along and push them out of the squad. Would it be in their best interest to get like a summer loan like we saw from DK and Areola and come to mention it, DK is a player that I haven't mentioned at all, but was all the rave a transfer window ago, ends up not getting that move, and now we'll see. He might move in this window, he might not. It'll be interesting to see. But are there any players who are in the MLS contingent that are getting minutes for their club right now that you think might be in their best interest to get a loan to either elevate their status or solidify their status with the national team?
Sure, there are a couple names, but first I want to mention one name who we stopped talking about, who I actually think is maybe going to come back into the frame a little bit, and that's Cameron Carter-Vickers. By most accounts, he is tearing it up. He's rated by a couple of metrics as the best center back in Scotland. Mm-hmm. He is on loan from Spurs. Spurs originally told Celtic they could have him for 6, and then they just, based on how he's been playing, they were like, nope, it's 10. So I think that he's someone to watch as well, especially since our center back situation is fluid. We thought John Brooks was an Sharpie starter. He's not. We think that Miles Robinson is the guy. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Beyond that, you've got Chris Richards, you've got Walker Zimmerman, you've got Mark McKenzie. All of these guys are like maybes, either due to talent ceiling or to playing time. As for the MLS contingent, obviously Caden Clark is off to...
Yeah, I left him out because he's off to Leipzig anyway.
Yeah, right.
Like, potentially going to get loaned out. We don't really know the details of that yet. Yeah.
But the guy who I do want to mention, and you mentioned him briefly, or I don't know if we've mentioned him yet, but Cole Bassett is actually someone who I'm really interested in, because he turned down a loan to Porto B last summer. Where our good friend and erstwhile lottery ticket Sebastian Soto is hanging out. So I think that Cole Bassett is still someone who's seen as someone with a high ceiling. He didn't play great this year for the Rapids, but he is someone who I think we should monitor. I would love it if he could find his way to like honestly like a mid-table Dutch or Belgian team, a la Luca Della Torre. Where he could play in sort of a different scenario, a different situation, beyond the reach of MLS, but still, working hard and getting it going. So he's probably the MLS player who I would like to see move most, just because I think that his talent level is not being unlocked at Colorado. Whereas, if you're talking about the Paul Areolas and the Jordan Morrises, they are who they are. I like Jordan Morris a lot. I loved that he got that move to Swansea and then unfortunately got cut short because he got hurt. But if Jordan Morris moves abroad, great. I wish the best for him. And if he can get healthy, then he's a huge boon to this team. But beyond that, you're looking at what we've always looked at, which is, Kyle Duncan at some random Belgian team. Cool. Great. Like maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but it's a lottery ticket. And that's really what we're looking at for all of these guys: Cowell, Clark, Bassett, everybody with the first name beginning with C, Cole, Caden, Cade, etc.
Yeah. There's a lot of lottery tickets out there. There's a lot of unknowns. The only thing that we do know is that we don't have much time left. We got like a calendar year left for these guys to somehow prove themselves in the eyes of Greg Berhalter, get a call-up, do well in that call-up, continue to do well for that club to earn future call-ups, somehow break into the squad and become members of the team.
One more name, Jordi Mihailovic. Don't go to Bologna.
Yeah, that's an interesting player.
Don't go to Bologna, because I'm telling you that the jokes that I will be making are not worth it. All of every single time he doesn't make a starting lineup, it will be baloney. Every time. And I apologize in advance. Like, I don't want to do this. Don't make me do it, Jordy.
Hey, so there's a lot more names on the list, but we got to cut this off at some point because we can go on and on with all the Americans that could potentially make moves in this window. Thank you so much for talking about the transfers with me. Can you give a second and tell everybody where they can find your content?
Sure. So we're on Twitter at TLS_N_TDS. I don't know if my bug is here. If it is,
it will be. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can find us there. I'm usually there. Somebody else from the podcast might be handling it, but it's usually me. We are on podcasting like twice a week. You can check us out on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever. Touchlines and touchdowns. We occasionally will use our YouTube, but we mostly leave that to Sam because he's much better at it than we are. So beyond that, just make sure to subscribe here. And if you want to subscribe to us, that's cool too.
if nothing else, I hope we kind of illuminated to you guys that the U.S. men's national team that we know right now might be very different to the U.S. men's national team that we know in a couple months, because so many players, so many of our top guys that are getting starting minutes might not be playing for the club that they're currently playing for in a couple of months. Guys, thank you so much. As always, subscribe button, like button, all that good stuff. Thank you for hanging out with me and Asa. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report.